This video is about the short-run equilibrium in a macro market, showing the intersection of aggregate demand and the short-run aggregate supply curve. So here we have a graph showing the short-run aggregate supply curve and aggregate demand curve on the same graph, and the intersection is what's known as macro equilibrium. So here's our United States market. We are currently producing at Y1, and we're currently producing at a price level of price level 1, or PL1. So when we put these together, we end up with an equilibrium, and then things happen that's going to change equilibrium and have an effect on price level and GDP. Just like back in Unit 2 when we dealt with demand and supply, as demand and supply shifted, that's going to change the equilibrium price and quantity, but in the macro market it's price level and the quantity is real GDP. So let's say in this instance that government increases spending through a spending bill on highways. So we have to distinguish when we put aggregate supply and aggregate demand together as to which shift factor it is. So aggregate demand is about spending and aggregate supply is about production or producing. So when the government spends more on the highway bill, that's going to change aggregate demand. So aggregate demand is going to increase to the right, and we have a new equilibrium. So as the government spends more money, or any group spends more money, that's going to raise the price level, and it's going to increase the amount of GDP. Now we'll also get into the idea that as GDP increases, unemployment falls. But for now, we'll just focus on the basics of graphing. So now let's say the government is going to increase taxes on individuals. Okay, so individuals can't produce, so it's not aggregate supply, so it's going to be on the aggregate demand side. So as taxes increase, consumers have less money, and less money means less spending. So in this case, aggregate demand is going to fall or decrease. So we have aggregate demand 2, we have our new equilibrium. So price level has fallen, and real GDP has fallen. Now if we move over to the supply side shifts, let's say that the government is going to deregulate a lot of industries. So in deregulating the industries, they're going to be able to produce more and supply is going to increase. So as SRAS shifts to the right, as they increase, it's going to drive the price level down as there's more production of goods, and they're producing more, so there's going to be more GDP as GDP is increased. Instead, let's say, like in the 1970s and 80s, that there's an oil price surge. So the price of oil rises. And because oil is an input for many goods across the economy, when oil prices rise, firms have to pay more money to buy gasoline and buy oil and oil products. And so when they spend more money in that category, they have less money to spend elsewhere, so production falls. And we notice this is what's called stagflation. So SRAS decreases, or cost push inflation for that matter. SRAS decreases as input prices drive the price level up, and with less production comes less GDP.